Hello, my name is Anna. I'm 22 years old, and I grew up in a small town with my mother. We run a little flower shop together. It's not big, not famous, but it's where I spend almost every day of my life.
And before Anna continues her story, let me ask you this. Have you ever met someone who completely changed the way you see the world? Sometimes it's not a dramatic moment. Sometimes it's quiet, almost ordinary. But in that silence, everything begins to shift. Hi, English learners. This is Speak English with Leo, and I'm Laura. Glad you're here with me today. Stay with me until the end, because after the story, I'll guide you through a short practice session so you can learn new vocabulary and make it part of your own English. But for now, let's return to Anna and listen to her story.
My father was gone before I could even remember his face. When I once asked about him, my mother only said, "He left." That's all. She never said more, and I learned not to ask again. Our life was simple. We owned a tiny flower shop at the corner of the street. It was not big, not famous, but it was ours. Every morning we woke up early, before the sun, to pick fresh flowers from the market. Roses, lilies, daisies, sunflowers. The smell of flowers filled our little shop. It should have been a happy place. But inside, my heart was not open. I saw how my mother worked hard, yet always stayed quiet. She never laughed much. Sometimes when she thought I was not looking, I saw her wipe away tears in the back room. One evening, when I was still very young, I asked, "Mom, why don't you smile more?" She touched my hair gently and said, "Because people leave. Flowers fade, do not expect anything to last." Her words stayed with me. From that day, I believed her. I believed that love was weak, friendship was temporary, and trust was dangerous. At school, I was different. The other girls talked, laughed, and shared secrets. They invited me to join them, but I shook my head. I didn't want to share my heart. When people came close, I pulled away. Some tried to be kind, but I thought to myself, they will leave anyway. So I closed my heart. After school, I went straight to the flower shop. I helped my mother arrange bouquets. I swept the floor, cut the stems, tied the ribbons around the flowers. Customers came and went. They smiled when they received the flowers, but I didn't believe their smiles. To me, they were just like the flowers, beautiful for a short time, but gone too soon. Years passed like that. My world was quiet, my days always the same. Morning market, flower shop, cut, tie, sell, repeat. In the evening, I walked to the river. The river near our shop moved slowly, carrying away the reflection of the sky. I like sitting there because the water never asked questions. It never expected me to talk. It just kept flowing. And I thought maybe I was like the river, always moving, but never holding anything close. My mother grew older, but her words never changed. When I once asked about friends, she said, "Don't depend on people. They will leave, like your father left, like flowers that die." And I believed her. So I lived quietly, behind walls I had built inside myself. I told myself I was fine. I didn't need friends. I didn't need love. I had my books, my flowers, my mother. That was enough. At least I thought it was. But deep inside, sometimes, at night when I lay in bed, I felt something heavy in my chest, a kind of emptiness. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was strong. I told myself my heart was safe this way. Safe, but closed. I didn't know then that one day everything would change. I didn't know that a stranger would walk into our flower shop and slowly, quietly, teach me how to open my heart again. Before I continue my story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt the same? Have you ever kept your heart closed because you were afraid someone might leave? Think about it. If you want, you can share your answer with me. I'd really like to know. Anyway, that was my life. Quiet. Simple. Always the same. Until one day, everything began to shift. It was an ordinary morning. The shop smelled of roses and fresh lilies. Sunlight came through the window, falling gently on the glass jars filled with flowers. I was cutting stems, my hands moving quickly, my mind quiet as always. Then, the little bell above the door rang. Ding. I looked up. A young man stepped inside. He looked around slowly, as if the shop itself surprised him. His hair was a little messy, his shirt simple, but his smile was open, like he had nothing to hide. "Good morning," he said. His voice was warm, like sunlight breaking into a cold room. I didn't answer right away. I only asked, "What kind of flowers do you want?" He walked closer to the counter. "I'm not sure," he admitted, still looking around. "This is my first time here. What do you recommend?" I frowned slightly. Most customers knew what they wanted. They asked for roses for love, white lilies for sympathy, sunflowers for cheer. But this man stood there, hands in his pockets, as if flowers were a mystery to him. "You should choose yourself," I said quietly. "They're your flowers." He laughed, not in a loud way, but soft and honest. "Fair enough," he said. Then he walked slowly along the shelves, his eyes touching every bouquet. Finally, he pointed at a bunch of daisies. "These," he said. "Simple, bright. I like them." I wrapped the flowers quickly. He paid and thanked me. But before he left, he paused. "This is a nice shop," he said. "You must spend a lot of time here." I nodded. "Yes." That was all. He smiled again. Then he pushed open the door and left. The little bell rang once more. Ding. I told myself it was nothing, just a customer like all the others. I pushed the thought away and went back to work. But the next morning, the bell rang again. And there he was. Same messy hair, same open smile. "Good morning," he said. This time, I only looked at him. He walked to the counter. I'd like some flowers again. But maybe you can help me choose this time." I hesitated. Why was he back? Most people didn't buy flowers every day. It was strange. Still, I pointed at the roses. Roses, they're popular. He leaned on the counter, his eyes calm. "Too serious," he said. "Maybe something softer." I didn't know why, but I chose a bunch of carnations. He accepted them with a smile. Perfect. Again, he paid. Again, he thanked me. And again, before leaving, he said something unexpected. "You must really love flowers, do you?" I froze for a second. Did I love them? Or were they only my work, my routine, my cage? I didn't answer. He didn't wait for an answer either. He just smiled and left. That day, I felt uneasy. His question stayed in my mind. I tried to forget it, but it echoed in me like a quiet bell. The following week, he came almost every day. Sometimes he bought roses, sometimes lilies, sometimes only one single flower. It didn't matter which one. What mattered was, he always stayed a little longer. He asked simple questions. How do you keep flowers fresh? Do you like mornings at the market? Which flower is your favorite? Most of the time, I didn't answer, or I answered with one word, but he never looked offended. He never pushed me. He just kept showing up. My mother noticed. One evening she said, "That boy is different. He keeps coming back." I shrugged. He's just a customer. But inside I wasn't so sure. Customers came, customers left. But this one, he kept returning, and that made me uneasy. One evening after closing the shop, I walked to the river as always. The sky was orange, the water calm. I sat on the bench quietly. Then, I heard footsteps. I turned. It was him, the young man from the shop. He was carrying nothing this time. No flowers, no bag, just himself. I looked away quickly. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He smiled. "Same as you. I like the river." I frowned. How did he know I came here? Had he been following me? But he didn't sit too close. He kept a little distance. He looked at the water, not at me. For a long time we didn't speak. Only the sound of the river moved between us. Finally, he said softly, "You don't talk much, do you?" I stayed silent. He chuckled. "That's okay. Silence is not always empty. Sometimes it's peaceful." I didn't know why, but my chest felt heavy at his words. I wanted to tell him to leave, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed sitting, watching the water beside him. That night, when I went to bed, I thought about him. The stranger with the open smile, the stranger who didn't seem to care about my silence. And for the first time in years, my quiet heart felt a small ripple inside. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. Do you remember the first time you met someone who felt different? Someone who stayed in your mind even after they walked away? If you do, share it with me. I'd love to know your story too. Anyway, that was only the beginning. Things were about to change in ways I never expected. The visits continued. Morning after morning, the little bell on the shop door rang, and there he was. Always smiling, always calm. At first, he only bought flowers, but soon he began to bring something with him. One day, he placed a paper cup on the counter. "For you," he said. I looked at it suspiciously. "What is it?" "Tea," he answered. "You work hard. You should drink something warm." I frowned. "I don't drink tea." He only shrugged. "Then I'll bring coffee next time." I wanted to refuse, to push the cup away. But my mother walked out from the back room, smiled at him, and took the tea for herself. "Thank you," she said warmly. Her smile surprised me. She rarely smiled at anyone. The next day, he came again, this time with coffee. "This is for you," he said, placing it on the counter. I shook my head. "I don't drink coffee either." He laughed softly. "Then maybe next time I'll bring juice." And somehow, that made my lips twitch. Not quite a smile, but something close. Sometimes he stayed longer, standing near the buckets of flowers. He didn't speak much. He only watched as I tied ribbons around stems, cut leaves, or arranged bouquets. Sometimes, he asked questions about flowers, not too many, just enough to keep the silence gentle. "Why do people give roses on Valentine's Day? Which flower lasts the longest in water? Do sunflowers really follow the sun?" I gave short answers. Yes, a week, maybe 2. Yes, they do. He didn't seem to mind. In fact, he looked satisfied just to hear my voice at all. One evening after closing the shop, I walked as usual to the river. The air smelled of rain, and the sky was soft gray. When I reached the bench, I found him already sitting there. I stopped. "What are you doing here again?" He tilted his head. "This is your place, isn't it? I like it too." I sighed, but I didn't leave. Instead, I sat down a little distance away. The river moved slowly, carrying the reflections of the clouds. We sat in silence for a while. Then, without looking at me, he asked, "Do you like working with flowers?" I hesitated. The answer should have been easy. Flowers were my life, my world. But the truth, I wasn't sure. "They don't stay long," I finally said. "They fade, they leave." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said softly, "Maybe that's what makes them beautiful." I turned my head to look at him. He was watching the water, not me. But his words stayed in my chest, like a seed planted deep inside. Days turned into weeks. He kept coming back. He brought tea, sometimes juice. Once he even brought a small box of biscuits. "For you and your mother," he said. My mother smiled again. A rare, gentle smile I had not seen in years. I frowned, but I couldn't stop her from accepting. At first I told myself he would get bored. that one day he would stop coming. But he didn't. Morning after morning, he appeared with his calm smile. Evening after evening, he sat at the river. He didn't push me to speak. He didn't demand answers. He was simply there. And slowly, quietly, something inside me began to change. One afternoon, as the sun set, I saw him at the bench by the river again. This time I walked toward him faster. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. "You came," he said. "I always come," I replied. The words surprised even me. Did I just admit that? He laughed softly, then looked back at the water. "Good," he said. And for some reason, that simple word warmed my chest. We sat there in silence, but it didn't feel empty anymore. The air was cool, the sky painted with orange and pink. I realized I was waiting for these moments now. I was waiting for him. That night, in my small room, I sat on my bed, holding a daisy in my hand. It was left over from the shop. I turned it slowly, watching the petals. For the first time, I wondered, maybe flowers were not just about fading. Maybe they were about presence. They were beautiful because they did not stay forever. And maybe people were the same. I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. But no matter how much I tried, his smile, his voice, his presence stayed with me, and I knew something inside me was opening, something I had promised myself would never open again. Let me pause here and ask you, do you believe small gestures, a smile, a cup of tea, or simply sitting in silence with someone, can change the way we feel? I didn't used to think so, but now I'm not so sure. What about you? Life was still quiet, but inside me, things were already shifting. The days grew warmer. Spring flowers filled the shop. Tulips, peonies, daffodils. The air smelled sweet, and sometimes I caught myself humming softly while arranging bouquets. It felt strange, almost wrong, but lighter than before. And he was still there. Every morning, the bell on the shop door rang. Every evening, at the river, his figure was waiting. He had become part of my days, like the flowers, like the river, like breathing itself. One evening, after closing the shop, I found him sitting by the river as usual. The sun was setting, the water glowing gold. I sat beside him closer than I usually did. He looked at me, then reached into his pocket. "I have something for you," he said. He placed a small box on my lap. I frowned. "What is this?" "Open it later," he replied with a smile. At home that night, I sat on my bed holding the box. It was simple, light, almost ordinary. Still, my heart beat faster as I opened it. Inside was a small silver keychain, a little flower shape hanging from a black string. It was not expensive, not shining with gold or jewels, but it was gentle, thoughtful, and it felt like me. I held it for a long time. Then, without thinking, I slipped it into my pocket. The next day, when he came to the shop, I didn't mention the gift. But later that evening, when we met at the river, I pulled the keychain out and held it in my palm. He saw it and smiled softly. "You kept it." I nodded. "Yes." For a moment, the silence between us felt full. Not heavy, not empty, but full of something I couldn't name. Then came the rain. One afternoon, the sky turned gray and the clouds broke open. The shop was quiet. No customers, only the sound of rain beating the roof. My mother had gone home early, so I sat alone among the flowers. I told myself he would not come. No one came out in weather like this. But then, ding, the little bell rang. I looked up. There he was, standing in the doorway, his clothes wet, his hair dripping, but he was smiling. "You're still here," he said. I frowned. "You're wet." He laughed, shaking his hair like a child. "Yes, I know." I sighed, went to the back, and returned with a towel. "Here." He took it, dried his face, then sat on the chair near the counter. For a long time, we listened to the rain together. The shop was cold, but somehow, with him there, it felt warm. Finally, he spoke. "Do you ever feel lonely?" The question surprised me. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I had never thought about it. I had always told myself I was fine being alone. "No," I said quietly at last. "I don't need people." He looked at me, his eyes soft but steady. "But you let me stay." The words hit me like thunder. I wanted to argue, but my lips stayed silent. Because he was right. I never told him to leave. I never pushed him away. And I didn't want to. That evening, for the first time, the silence felt warm, not empty. Full. Days passed. I began noticing small things about him. The way he laughed softly when he was nervous. The way he looked at the sky as if he was searching for answers there. The way he always sat on the same spot at the river, like it belonged to him. These small things stayed with me. I carried them silently, like the keychain in my pocket. Then one evening, as the sun sank low and painted the water with fire, he turned to me. His voice was quiet, but clear. "If I leave one day," he asked, "will you miss me?" The words struck me hard. I wanted to answer no. I wanted to say I didn't care, but my throat tightened. My lips refused to move, so I said nothing. He smiled, but this time it was different. Softer. Sad. "It's okay," he said gently. "I already know the answer." That night, I lay in bed wide awake. The sound of the rain echoed in my memory. His question burned in my chest. What if he leaves? The thought terrified me, more than I wanted to admit. For the first time in my life, I was afraid. Afraid not of being with someone, but of losing them. Let me stop here for a moment. If someone looked at you and asked, "Will you miss me?" how would you answer? Would you tell the truth? Or would you hide your feelings like I did? Think about it. And if you want, share it with me. The days kept moving, but inside me, nothing felt the same anymore. The next morning, I waited. I arranged flowers slowly, listening for the little bell above the door. Ding. But it never rang. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he would come later. But the hours passed, customers came and went, and he did not appear. That evening I walked to the river. The bench was empty. The air was colder than before, the water moving silently under the gray sky. I sat there, pretending not to care. But deep inside, I felt something missing, like a hollow space in my chest. The next day, he still didn't come, and the next, and the next. The shop felt quieter, even with the sound of customers, even with my mother humming softly in the back. The river felt emptier, even with the wind moving the trees. I told myself over and over, it doesn't matter. People leave. That's what they do. You knew this. But at night, when I lay in bed, I reached into my pocket, held the little keychain in my hand, and felt my heart ache. It mattered. It mattered more than anything. One evening, when the sky was heavy with clouds, I walked to the river again. The bench was empty as always. But this time, something was lying on the wooden seat. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was a small folded note. The paper crumpled as if left in a hurry. I opened it slowly. My eyes traced the words, and my chest tightened. Had to leave, but I was right. You will miss me. I read the words again and again. Tears blurred the ink. My throat burned. For so long I had told myself I didn't need anyone, that people only left, that closing my heart was safer. But he was right. I did miss him. I missed his voice, his quiet presence, the way he asked simple questions, the way he sat beside me without demanding anything. I missed the way he made silence feel full. That night, I sat on my bed, the note in one hand, the keychain in the other. I turned the little flower shape slowly, feeling its weight. He was gone, but he was still here, in my thoughts, in my heart. And I finally understood. My heart was no longer closed. It had opened without me realizing it. And now, I didn't know how to close it again. The days after felt different. The shop was the same. The river was the same. My mother was the same. But I was not. When customers came, I looked at them more closely. When they smiled, I tried, just a little, to smile back. When a child laughed in front of the flower buckets, I felt warmth instead of distance. I still missed him. Every day. But the emptiness was not only pain, it was also proof. Proof that my heart was alive, that I could feel, that I could love. One evening, I stood by the river alone. The water moved slowly, the wind soft against my face. I whispered to the air, almost as if he could hear me. Thank you. You showed me that silence is not always empty, that flowers are beautiful because they don't last, and that even a closed heart can bloom again. The river carried my words away. I watched them disappear into the distance, but I didn't feel afraid anymore. For the first time in my life, I knew, even if people leave, love itself stays. It stays inside us. It changes us, and it makes us alive. Before I close my story, I want to ask you one last question. Do you think it's better to keep your heart safe but closed, or to open it even if it might hurt one day? I wonder what you believe. If you'd like, share it with me. I'd love to read your thoughts, and that is where my story ends. But perhaps for me, it was not an ending at all. It was the beginning of something I had never known before.
Great job for staying with me until the end of the story. Now let's take a few minutes to learn and practice English together. Vocabulary Spotlight. Now that we've finished Anna's story, let's slow down a little and look at some useful words from what you just heard. I chose 5 words that I think are special, not only in the story, but also in real life. The first one is whisper. In the story, Anna said the wind whispered through the trees. You see, whisper doesn't always mean people talking softly. It can also describe a gentle sound in nature, like the rain, the wind, or even the waves. For example, you could say, she whispered a secret to her friend, or the leaves whispered in the night breeze. Beautiful, right? The second word is hollow. When Anna said, I felt a hollow space in my chest, she was describing emptiness, not just physically, but emotionally. You might also hear people say, his voice sounded hollow after the bad news, or the old tree trunk was hollow inside. It gives this feeling of something missing. The third word I want to share is ripple. In the story, Anna's heart felt a small ripple. Normally, ripple is what you see when you throw a stone into water, tiny waves moving outward. But we also use it for feelings. Her words sent a ripple of hope through me. It's a gentle but powerful image. Then we have ache. Anna said her heart ached when he didn't come. An ache is not a sharp pain. It's slow, deep, and steady. Like, my back aches after working all day. But we also use it for emotions. Sometimes we ache for something we've lost. And finally, fade. Flowers fade, colors fade, even memories fade. In the story, Anna kept saying flowers fade, people leave. But you can also use it in daily life. The sunlight faded at the end of the day, or her smile slowly faded. It's simple, but so meaningful. So these are the 5 words I wanted you to notice today. Whisper, hollow, ripple, ache, and fade. Each one is full of feeling. And now, it's your turn to practice with them. To really remember new vocabulary, you can't just listen once and forget it. You need to put the words into real situations. Try them in real sentences, or even better, use them in a little story of your own. That's why I have a small challenge for you. Let's practice together. Practice challenge. So here's my challenge for you. I'll give you 5 words from today's story, and I want you to create a very short story, just 3 or 4 sentences. Let's start with the first set of words. River, silence, smile, empty, remember. Here's my example. I sat by the river in silence. His smile was gone and the bench felt empty. Still, I remember the way he once made the world feel alive. Now let's try another set. Flower, miss, heart, rain, open. Here's my short story. I gave her a flower before the rain started. She asked, "Will you miss me?" My heart was quiet, but open at last. See how simple it is? Now it's your turn. Choose any 5 words from the story, maybe from my list or your own, and write a short story of your own in the comments. Don't worry if it's not perfect. What matters is that you try, and I'll be here waiting to read your stories. And that brings us to the end of Anna's story. A story about how even the quietest heart, a heart once closed, can slowly begin to bloom again. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What part of Anna's story touched you the most? And do you think it's better to keep your heart safe but closed, or to open it, even if it might hurt? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them. And don't forget, the best way to learn English is to practice. So go back, listen again, shadow the sentences, and try writing your own short story using today's new words. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to Speak English with Leo for more stories and English practice every week. It really helps us grow this channel and bring you more content. This is Laura saying thank you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.